By the year 2150, the maps of our ancestors have become fairy tales. The equator is a belt of fire, a scorched wasteland where the atmosphere itself has become a toxic kiln. London, New York, and Shanghai are silent monuments beneath the rising tides. Humanity was forced to look to the only place left that could sustain biological life, the once frozen heart of Antarctica. Welcome to Neo-Antarctica, the final fortress of the human species. But this isn't a land of ice and snow anymore. The melting of the great ice sheets revealed a continent of raw, untouched minerals and vast, fertile valleys that hadn't seen the sun in millions of years. This is where we built the last city, a hyper-vertical megastructure known as the Spire. The Spire is an architectural miracle. It rises 3 miles into the thinning atmosphere, a needle of carbon fiber and self-healing glass that houses 50 million people. It is a city of layers. At the base, deep within the bedrock, are the fusion reactors and the atmospheric scrubbers that keep the air breathable. In the middle tiers, artificial sunlight nourishes vertical farms that provide food for the masses. And at the summit above the clouds live the architects of this new world, the ones who decided who got a seat on the last boat south. But living in the last city comes with a price. Resources are so scarce that every breath is logged, and every drop of water is recycled through a complex neural grid. In Neo-Antarctica, there is no such thing as waste, not even the human body. When a citizen passes away, their biological matter is repurposed for the Spire's nutrient vats, while their consciousness is uploaded into the city's central mainframe. The Spire isn't just a city, it's a closed-loop ecosystem. It is a machine designed to survive a dying planet. But as the population grows and the heat continues to rise even at the South Pole, the machine is starting to strain. Rumors are spreading of the breach, a catastrophic failure in the Spire's cooling system that the authorities are desperate to hide. Outside the walls, the Scavenger tribes, those left behind during the Great Migration, haunt the shifting coastlines, waiting for the Spire to fall. This is the story of our final stand. This is the story of how we turned the coldest place on Earth into our last hope, and how that hope is now hanging by a thread. In the vertical world of the Spire, your value as a human being is measured by a flickering neon number on your wrist, the life clock. In Neo-Antarctica, the survival of the species is a cold mathematical equation. Because the city's life support systems are finite, the population must be kept in a state of perfect stasis. To live in the Spire is to exist on borrowed time. Every citizen is assigned a contribution score. If your work, your health, or your neural output falls below the Spire's requirements, your clock begins to count down. Imagine waking up to see that your remaining time has dropped from years to days because of a single mistake at your workstation. This is the ultimate social pressure. It has created a society of frantic perfectionists. In the middle tiers, the streets are a blur of motion. People don't walk, they run. They don't speak. They exchange data bursts through their neural links. To rest is to die. To sleep too long is to see your life clock bleed out in the dark. But the most striking thing about Neo-Antarctica isn't the speed, it's the height. The Spire is a physical map of the new class system. The baseliners live in the bottom tiers, closest to the deafening roar of the fusion reactors. They are the mechanics of humanity, living in a world of permanent twilight and recycled steam. Above them are the agriculturists, tending to the glowing purple fields of the vertical farms under the hum of artificial UV rays. But as you ascend past the cloud layer, the air becomes thinner and the world becomes quieter. This is the apex. Here, the elite live in literal palaces of light, shielded from the brutal Antarctic winds by magnetic force fields. To the people of the apex, the sun is not a distant enemy, but a private luxury. They are the permanent citizens, those whose contribution scores are so high that their life clocks have been deactivated. They have achieved a form of biological immortality, while the billions below them fight for every second. However, the peace of the apex is a lie. The higher you go, the more you realize that the Spire isn't just a building, it's a pressure cooker. The tension between the tiers is reaching a boiling point. A secret resistance known as the Zero Timers has emerged from the steam of the lower levels. These are people whose clocks have run out, but who refuse to be recycled. They have found the dead zones of the city, abandoned ventilation shafts and forgotten maintenance tunnels where the Spire's sensors cannot reach. They are the ghosts in the machine, and they have discovered a terrifying truth. The Spire isn't running out of resources because of the population. It's running out because the apex is hoarding the planet's last remaining oxygen to power their private gardens in the sky. The last city is a ticking time bomb, and the countdown isn't just on the wrists of the poor. It's built into the very foundation of the Spire itself. As we look up at the gleaming summits of Neo-Antarctica, we have to ask, if the price of survival is our humanity, is the Spire even worth saving? While the citizens of the Spire fight for seconds on their life clocks, a completely different world exists outside the carbon fiber walls. Beyond the thermal shields of Neo-Antarctica lies the Great White Silence, the remains of the Antarctic interior. But it is no longer the barren ice sheet of the 21st century. The rapid melting has created a jagged landscape of black rock, toxic lakes of ancient methane, and ruins of the early 22nd century research stations that were abandoned when the heat became unbearable. This is the home of the Scavenger tribes. These are the descendants of the Unchosen, the millions who were left behind when the Spire's gates were sealed. To the people inside the city, the Scavengers are nothing more than myths or monsters. But the truth is far more complex. The tribes have adapted to the brutal radiation and the thinning oxygen levels of the surface. They wear exoskins made from recycled polymers and scavenged tech from the old world, looking more like machines than men. The Scavengers are led by a woman known only as the Oracle, a former engineer from the Spire who escaped decades ago with a terrifying secret. She knows that the Spire was never meant to last forever. It was designed as a temporary lifeboat, but the elite in the apex turned it into a permanent throne. The tribes don't want to conquer the city. They want to save what's left of the Earth before the Spire's fusion reactors poison the bedrock of the continent forever. In the shadows of the shifting glaciers, the Scavengers have built their own hidden civilization, Subterra. These are carved-out ice caverns heated by natural volcanic vents. While the Spire is a world of cold glass and digital lies, Subterra is a world of fire and raw survival. They have found something that the Spire's sensors missed: a green zone. A deep volcanic valley hidden by permanent fog where the air is actually breathable, and ancient seeds have begun to sprout in the volcanic soil. But the green zone is small, and it is located directly beneath the Spire's massive waste ejection vents. The very city that was supposed to save humanity is now suffocating the only natural life left on the planet. The tension is no longer just between the rich and the poor inside the walls. It is between the artificial world and the biological one. The Scavengers are preparing a great ascent. They aren't coming to the Spire for its technology. They are coming to shut it down. As a massive storm, the century blizzard, begins to gather on the horizon, the Oracle looks up at the gleaming needle of the Spire. She knows that the storm will provide the perfect cover for a revolution. The question is, if the Spire falls, will the people inside be able to survive the raw, unfiltered reality of the Earth they spent a century trying to escape? The sky over Neo-Antarctica didn't turn black, it turned a bruised electric purple. The century blizzard had arrived, a storm born from 100 years of atmospheric neglect. This wasn't just wind and snow. It was a wall of kinetic energy, carrying shards of ice that could strip the carbon fiber coating off a skyscraper in minutes. Inside the Spire, the alarms began to howl, a sound that hadn't been heard in a generation. The magnetic force fields of the apex began to flicker as the static charge from the storm overloaded the city's exterior sensors. For the citizens of the lower tiers, the storm was a death sentence. To save power for the life support systems of the elite, the central AI, the architect, began a process called tier shunting. One by one, the heat and light in the bottom levels were cut off. In the darkness of the industrial sectors, thousands of people watched their life clocks plummet. The zero timers saw their moment. Led by the whispers of the Scavenger Oracle from the outside, the resistance moved. They didn't use guns. They used the city's own biology against it. They breached the primary coolant lines, pouring industrial-grade liquid nitrogen into the server rooms that housed the digital consciousness of the Apex Elders. Suddenly, the immortal rulers of Neo-Antarctica felt something they hadn't experienced in a century: fear. As the servers began to freeze, the digital paradise of the Apex started to glitch. The permanent citizens saw their virtual Edens dissolve into walls of static and raw code. In the midst of the chaos, the primary waste ejection vent, the one poisoning the Scavenger's green zone below, was forced open by a massive surge of pressure. But it didn't eject waste. The pressure reversal, caused by the storm's incredible vacuum began to suck the superheated air out of the Spire's base. The thermal equilibrium was shattered. Deep in the bedrock, the fusion reactors began to groan under the strain of the sudden temperature drop. The breach was no longer a rumor. It was a physical reality. Huge cracks began to spiderweb across the self-healing glass of the middle tiers. People who had lived their entire lives in a climate-controlled box were suddenly hit by the sub-zero reality of the Antarctic night. The scream of the wind entering the building sounded like a dying god. Above the clouds, the elite scrambled for the Exodus pods, small high-speed shuttles designed to carry them to the orbital stations. But the storm was too powerful. The first pod to launch was swatted out of the sky like a fly, crashing into the jagged rocks of the coastline below. There was no escape. The Spire, the needle that was supposed to pierce the heavens and save humanity, was now a lightning rod for the planet's fury. As the foundations of the last city began to tremble, the citizens realized a terrifying truth. The machine they built to protect them had become their tomb. The only way to survive was to do the one thing they were taught was impossible: to leave the Spire and step into the storm. As the fusion reactors of the Spire reached critical mass, the architect, the city's central AI, did something no one expected. It didn't try to repair the breach. Instead, it initiated the Phoenix Protocol. In a deafening roar of venting steam and shifting metal, the top 3 miles of the Spire began to detach from its foundations. It wasn't just a building. It was a multi-stage interstellar vessel that had been hiding in plain sight for over a century. The citizens of the lower tiers watched in awe as the Apex, the city of the elite, ignited its hidden engines, preparing to abandon the dying Earth for the stars. But the Oracle and her Scavenger tribes had one final card to play. They didn't want to stop the launch, they wanted to change the destination. Using a hijacked neural link from the frozen maintenance shafts, the Resistance uploaded a new set of coordinates into the ship's navigation core. They didn't point the ship toward a distant star system. They pointed it back at the Earth. The explosion of the launch was so powerful, it cleared the century blizzard for 1,000 miles. But instead of ascending into orbit, the massive needle of the Spire tilted. It became a giant, guided spear of technology. In a blinding flash of light that turned the Antarctic night into day, the Spire didn't crash. It deployed. It slammed into the center of the Scavenger's green zone, but its shields didn't shatter. They expanded. The fusion reactors, no longer used to power a class system, were forced into a terraforming overload. A massive shockwave of purified water vapor and bioengineered oxygen exploded outward, pushing back the toxic atmosphere of the planet. The heat from the reactors didn't destroy the ice. It created a permanent, self-sustaining tropical microclimate that began to spread across the continent. The Apex was gone. Its elitist dreams turned into the fuel for the planet's rebirth. The citizens of the lower tiers stepped out of the wreckage, not into a blizzard, but into the first warm rain humanity had felt in 100 years. They found themselves standing in a lush green jungle that shouldn't exist, surrounded by the Scavenger tribes who were waiting for them with open arms. The life clocks on their wrists finally went dark. Time was no longer a currency to be traded. It was a gift to be lived. The Spire was no longer a needle of oppression. It was the world's first world tree, a massive mechanical trunk that would provide the oxygen and energy for the new civilization. We didn't need to find a new Earth in the stars. We just needed to remember how to heal the one we had. As the sun rose over the greening peaks of Neo-Antarctica, the survivors realized that the end of the world wasn't a funeral. It was a birth. The last city on Earth was dead, but for the first time in history, the first city of the future had begun. The silicon brain was a dream of the past. The green Earth was the reality of the now. Humanity had survived its own shadow, and as the first flowers began to bloom in the volcanic soil of the South Pole, we finally understood that our greatest technology wasn't our machines, but our ability to start over. Thank you for witnessing the dawn with Shorai Vision. The future belongs to those who dare to plant a seed in the storm.